Hey everybody, just wanted to do some art history. We're going to do one a week. And first of all, I just wanted to let you guys know that I miss all of you. And it's very strange doing this without kids in front of me. And I don't know, it's just weird stuff, man. But we're going to do one art history video a week. I'm not necessarily going to time myself because it's not like we have a bell to worry about. And all I want you to do with this is just learn more about artists. It's not graded. I'm not going to test test you on it or anything like that. I just want you to learn more about really amazing artists because art is important always. I know I'm going to say that as an artist, but art is one of those things that in hard times especially we turn to books, movies, video games to kind of get us through, and it's a beautiful thing. So you're not going to get the Mr. Nelson arm waving and coffee slurping with a video, but I thought, better than nothing. So we're going to start off with the first video is going to be about Kathe Kollwitz, one of my favorite artists. Now, I have many, many favorite artists, as you probably know, but she is one of my inspirations. A German artist living 1867 to 1945. I'm going to tell you a little bit about why I think her art's incredible and why I love her so much. Okay, so first thing, I first saw this print, the one you see here, and it's really rough and it looks real, sketchy and stuff. And it's actually a woman holding her son who has died, and this is actually kind of a popular thing in art. You'll see a lot of paintings like this. There's a famous sculpture by Michelangelo where it's Mary holding her dead son Jesus, but in this case, it's a self-portrait of Kathe Kollwitz. This is the first thing I ever saw. So I was working at in the art gallery at Augustana, helping put paintings up in the wall, and I was just doing my job, and Augustana has a copy of this print. So when I saw this print, it just stopped me in my tracks. And I thought, oh my gosh, look at this. Who did this? Who did this picture? This is, the shading, the energy of the picture, the beautiful shadows and stuff. Who did this? And so my boss said, oh, this is Kathe Kollwitz. You should check her out because your stuff, the way you draw is really kind of similar to the way she draws. So I just shared this quote. This is Kathe Kollowitz's quote, what she said about her art. She said, I've never worked coldly, but rather in a certain sense with my own blood. Those who see my art must feel that. Now, I don't want you to think she's some sort of creep who used actually her own blood to draw. This is meaning that she just drew with her everything she had. She didn't sit down and do these like careful little, drawings with rulers and stuff. I mean, when she would do art, she would just pour everything she had into that art, and you can feel it when you look at it. So Kathe Kollwitz grew up in Germany at a time when many women were discouraged from doing almost any job except for being a mother or maybe a secretary. But Kathe Kollwitz, from an early age, loved to draw. And a lot of times when you're an artist, once you're an artist, you just can't help yourself. You got to do what you got to do, right? So Kathe's father noticed how amazing she was at a young age with drawing. And her father, luckily for her father was really cool. He did not believe in any of the stereotypes at the time about women not being able to do certain things. He believed women could do anything that a man could do, which is darn right. And so he wanted his daughter to do what she loved, which is to be an artist. So at a young age, he went to a store. They didn't have a lot of money, and he bought her a plaster cast of like different things like faces and hands and stuff. And what he would do is he'd bring those home to his daughter and say, hey, Kathe, go ahead and draw these casts, because that's actually one of the best ways to learn how to draw is to learn by looking at something and trying to draw it. And the great thing about these plaster casts is they're just, black and white. They're white plaster casts. So she was able to start learning at a young age by just drawing these casts for hours and hours and hours. And when she was about 18, she decided to apply for art school. So she sent off her portfolio of sketches and drawings, and she was immediately accepted because her work is incredible. So the first day of class, she shows up and the professor looks at her and says, "Oh, you're a woman." And she's like, "Yeah, duh." And he said, "Oh, I'm sorry. We don't allow women in this school." So obviously she was pretty salty about that. She went back home, and the only option for her there was some art schools for women specifically. They separated the guys from the girls, and of course, as you might guess, the art classes for women had all like were way less nice. They didn't use the best materials. They were given the cheapest stuff to do. They weren't given models to draw from because at the time it was considered, oh, women can't handle drawing models, which is just complete and utter garbage. I just hate it. But Kathe still was able to draw in the class, and she immediately stood out as being incredible. And here's one of her self portraits. She did a profile. Her skill was phenomenal, and her art teachers knew, looking at her stuff, that she was way better than all the guys in their art classes. And they told her that. They said, "Listen, you're just incredible. Keep going." So she did. So she met while she was in school, she met a really nice guy named Carl. And Carl, like her, had compassion for everyone, not just certain people, everyone, especially those who were struggling in life. And Carl was a doctor. And what she loved about Carl, what Kathe loved, is that he, after he did his normal job, would open up a special clinic for anyone who couldn't afford medical care. So anyone in the community who was poor, couldn't afford medical care, he would open up his clinic, and he would be a free doctor's office for them. So after her art classes, Kathe would go and sit in her husband's clinic and draw the people that he was helping. And she just had a love for everyone, and especially people who were kind of struggling, people who were kind of going through a lot, because it takes a lot of strength to go through poverty and to go through sickness and to go through other things. So she was inspired by this. So her drawings became focused on people who were struggling in society. So that's kind of where she started. She worked with simple materials, pencil, charcoal, and started drawing the people she saw in her community, because they lived in kind of an area where people didn't have a lot of money. So she was drawing mothers, especially mothers who had to not only deal with like society's oppression of women, but also take care of their children at this very difficult time in Germany. Now, this is not her art. This is what art looked like at the time she was making art. This is what people expected when they went to buy a painting or went to look at an art show. They expected this beautiful, bright colors of different places around the world, usually with oil paint. Here's another example of that. This is a painting of, a very smooth skinned person done very carefully, bright colors, kind of sunny landscape, things like this. But Kathe was making stuff like this. So just to show you, that is what people expected. This is what she was doing. Okay. Just a little bit different. Her inspiration was from a real different source. This picture is about poverty. The guy is coming home. He just got fired from his job. He doesn't have enough food to put on the table. His children, his wife are looking at him like, what are we supposed to do? So just some other examples. Again, she used a lot of just usually black and white, lots of shadows. And this, you can hardly tell what this even is, probably looking at it. But what this is a woman, a peasant woman who's worked all day in the sun, and now she's tired, and she's kind of leaning on one of those Grim Reaper scythes that they use to cut down wheat. She's kind of leaning against it right now. And you can kind of see this is kind of where the blade of that and the handle is there. So again, Kathe Kollwitz was working with doing she was with the downtrodden people. So all her art would look back in German history at times when the people were sick of being oppressed and they rose up. So in this instance, this is a medieval thing. She's making a series of pictures about a medieval event when peasants got sick and tired of being treated like garbage by the lords of their that basically own the land they work. So they kind of rose up. And you see in the front here, you see this is they had a female actually leading them. Her name was Annie, and Annie was the leader of this revolt. And Kathe, of course, thought that was awesome that this powerful woman was in charge of leading these peasants to rise up. Here's some more pictures of that. Here's some more drawings from that series, prints from that series. Okay, now this is Germany was at the brink of war. This is about 1914. The world was at the brink of World War One. And when World War One started, the German youth at the time were super excited to join the war. They thought, oh, we're going to go off to battle. We're going to be, heroic, and it's going to be amazing. We're going to come back and be the heroes of our community. Look at these guys, smiling faces. Probably most of the men in this picture ended up dying. These are young guys. They had no idea the horrors of the war that they were about to fight in, and many of them would never make it home. Now, at the time, Kathe and Karl had a son, and this is just a picture. This is World War One starting off. Kathe's son was very eager to join the German army, and Kathe and her husband were very reluctant to let him join the army. They wanted to keep him out of the army, but he kept begging and begging and pleading and saying, "Please, Mom, please, Dad, let me join the army." And he was actually too young, so in order for her son to join the army, they had to sign a permission slip. And her Kathe's husband Karl was like, "No, we're never going to do this. No way, my son's going to go to war." But finally, Kathe, her son, wore her down, and she thought, if he really wants to do this, and he wants to, this is his life. You know, I got to live my life. My dad let me live my life. I'm gonna let him live his life. She signed the permission slip, and her son went off to war. Well, it wasn't long before she got every parent's worst nightmare, a letter, a telegram saying that her son was killed in battle, one of the first battles of the war. And she got this telegram, and the sad, one of the saddest things is this picture right here. She did this when her son was about 12. She needed a model for this picture about a mother mourning her dead son. And sadly and ironically, and kind of in a spooky way, she had her son pose for this. That's her son right there, pose for this picture when he was 12. Little did she know how that this picture would come true, and she would be mourning her son. So it's a very sad picture when you look at it like that. After her son died, she went into, of course, a deep depression and didn't do any art for, I don't know, a couple months. And for an artist, art is their outlet. They need to do art. So when she actually was making herself worse by not doing it, and her husband finally got her up and said, "Listen, you gotta get back to it. You gotta get back to it. This is the only way you're gonna be able to do this." So she started pouring her grief into a series of prints called The War Cycle. Now, just take a look at this picture. Look at it's kind of a totally different style from this, okay? A lot more thick lines. Now, this is why this is a different style, because this is the style of printmaking called woodcut or linocut. And this is a really different style of printmaking. And what you do is you take a flat surface, like a piece of wood, and you carve into it. And everywhere you carve into it, is going to be left white. So when you like roll ink over the top, see this picture of the owl here, everywhere they carved away is going to remain white. So when you roll ink on top, the ink's not going to get down to that white layer. It's going to leave ink on top. So then when you put ink on this piece, you put a piece of paper right on top. You can put it through a press or just rub the back of the paper, and you get a print of your drawing like that. And the reason these are so cool is because you can make as many copies as you want. And that way, the poor people, the people who didn't have a lot of money, that Kathe was drawing, could actually buy these for cheap. They could buy her art for cheap because she was making all these prints. I've tried this. Is one I did. This is a very hard method, and this is one I did that's kind of spooky looking. But again, you got to carve away all the parts that are going to be white and leave the parts, and it's very hard. Very hard. So this is some of the cycle that she made called the War Cycle after her son died. Again, a lot of it's focusing on mothers grieving. This is if you can see here, this is the mother, and that is her child here. And I don't, and I think they're both dead. I know, very happy stuff, right? This is the mother, and this is her child. There, you can see the little hand, little face. Again, very emotional pieces. She was pouring her grief into these. Here's another one. This is mother's grieving. You see the mother's big hand here protecting the child, saying, "No, my child is not going to be taken from me." So she's got her hand kind of protecting, and you see these different anguished expressions on the people's faces. This is basically a picture here of all the young men, like her son, being marched off to war. And you see the drummer, there's a drum in the front. The drummer leading them to war is actually Death. You see it's a skull here, leading these young men, like her son, to war, and to ultimately to die in the war. This is a really, she started to, I mean, obviously her theme is basically motherhood and the mother's role in raising and protecting her child. She felt very guilty about signing that permission slip to let her son go to war. And she vowed, no, I can't ever do this again. I mean, no mother should ever have to go through what I went through, where her son is sent off to war and then is killed. And again, this is like called the Tower of Mothers. You see all these mothers here just making this kind of protective circle, almost like how elephants and rhinos do when they're being attacked by lions. They circle around their children. You see the children peeking out here and they're saying, "You will not touch my kid." This is what you might call the mama bear. When someone messes with your kid and you're a mom, oh man, you go into mama bear mode. You're like, "You're not getting my kid." Okay. This is a really sad one here. This is actually a mother's face here. This is her face, and this is a child's face, and they're kind of almost blending together. Again, I don't know if they're sleeping, if they're dead. This is, again, another one of her themes of mother and child. Here, this is actually a self-portrait of this is her, and this is her husband. And this is them mourning the loss of their son. This is a really dramatic picture. You see Death is this kind of skull, and he is trying to get this child away from the mom. And you see the mom is grabbing her child and protecting her child with her own body against this skeletal figure who is kind of creeping in here. And there's another one. This is crazy looking. This is a Death. Again, you see the skull, the arms, and a cape. And this is Death swooping down, trying to get the children, picking them up and trying to take them away. Another one of the mother and child. You see the child's face, the mother's face. So the rest of her life, she was an activist against war. She never wanted war to happen again. And this is a print called "Never Again War," Nie Wieder Krieg. And this is, she started to be an anti-war activist. Okay, this is another. This says war against war because she started to use the horrible effects of war, showing them in her art to try to prevent another war from happening. So showing how horrific war is to prevent another one from happening. And this is a picture of some people blinded by the tear gas, these soldiers. These are another mother, again, these big hands protecting these children. "You will not take my kids." Okay, around this time after World War I, was the rise of the Nazis. The Nazis started to come to power in Germany. And the Nazis, that's my dog. I'm just going to keep it going. That's Lukey. The Nazis were everything Kathe Kollwitz wasn't. The Nazis their goal was to start another war. They were rising. Again, their goal was to oppress people that weren't like them. Their goal was to inspire or brainwash, in my opinion, young men to go to another war. And again, Kathe Kollwitz's art was the opposite of what the Nazis wanted. Her goal was to prevent war and to prevent more children from dying. Their role was to lead young men to war. And this is, again, obviously then they, as we know from reading Maus, one of the first things they did was to separate themselves from what they felt were the different people, like Jews and people with darker skin, people with mental and physical disabilities, homosexuals, gypsies. And this is a picture of a German doctor literally measuring the nose of a man to determine if the man is Jewish or not. Again, this is kind of one of those racist stereotypes that the Germans considered science, which is not science. It's a bunch of junk and a bunch of racist junk. The Germans used art as well to try to, just like Kathe Kollwitz was using art, they were trying to use art to promote their agenda, like young men, our strong young men should go to war. I don't know what these are. I'm just going to keep going. When the war started again, World War II, a lot of you know about World War II. The Nazis right away started going after people who would give them trouble. And of course, one of the people who was going to be trouble for them were intellectuals, people who actually thought with their brain, and teachers, and especially artists and writers, because they were the ones who were actually expressing themselves. And so one of the first things they did is they went to all the schools and tried to weed out teachers who were trying to teach their students that instead of, hating other people, you should be loving to everyone. And so they went right to Kollwitz, and at the time she was teaching art, just like I am. And she went, and the Nazis said, "You are done. We are firing you from your job. You're going to leave your job or else." So she had no choice but to leave. But that didn't stop her from making art. And she kept making art against war. She kept making art that the Nazis hated. And one day, knock, 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 she gets a knock on her studio door. And at the door is the Gestapo. And they say, "We know what you're doing. We know the kind of art you're making. And if you do not stop doing this, we're going to come back and we're going to take you and your husband to a concentration camp." So Kathe Kollwitz looked them in the eyes and said, "You either take me now or get out of here and let me do my work. I'm too old to deal with this." So then, surprisingly, the Gestapos were kind of like, whoa, and they left her alone. Now, one of the things that protected her was that she was so popular. Her art was so popular because she made art that everyone could afford. Her art was so popular with the people that the Nazis didn't want to become even more unpopular. So they knew if they killed Kathe, the people would hate them. So that's what protected her popularity with the people of Germany. Okay, we're going to just keep going. Unfortunately, the war took another one of her family members. She had another son who didn't die in World War I. He had a son, and that was her grandson, and he was killed in the war. So the war took away her son, and it took away her grandson. At the end of her life, nothing stopped her from making art. Nothing stopped her. She kept going. This is one of my favorite pictures. Look at that amazing arm. It's just basically a scribble line of charcoal to make her arm. And I just love this picture so much. And she just kept going. She kept making art. And but life was very hard for her. And as she got older, basically she knew World War II was still going. She basically she knew she was going to die. And this is the picture of death. But it's not death as a skull ripping people into the air. This is a death as a gentle hand right here. This is death. This is Kathe Kollwitz's self-portrait, tapping her on the shoulder saying, "Okay, it's your time. We're going to go." Kathe had already lost her husband, Carl, and she was ready. So soon after she did this drawing, she did pass away of old age. So just want to leave you with this picture. This is one of her final pictures. And it says, "Seed for the planting must not be ground." And this is basically the point of her art towards the end of her life after she lost her son, was basically, so this is the metaphor. The seed in this case are children. Children should be planted so that they can grow into adults. You shouldn't take the seeds or the children, which are, baby plants or seeds, and just grind them up. You should let them grow and become wonderful members of society instead of grinding them up in a war. So again, this is our first art history. Thanks for listening to my rambling. But this artist is one of my favorites. I'm just going to do one of these a week because yeah, I love it. And I miss you guys a lot. I hope you're safe. And again, anytime you need help or advice on the weird Google Classroom stuff, go ahead and shoot me a message and I will do my best to answer it. So keep safe, guys.